The Columbia Broadcasting System and its affiliate stations coast to coast present
Baseball, Beer, and Barbecue.
The 0-2, swing and a miss, strike three, blew it past it.
Discussing baseball, good drinks, and food.
And you got your honey mustard?
I love mustard.
With Ted Hicks and Lee Vowell.
Well, big deal. I am very professional.
On the Happy Hour Network.
Welcome to Baseball, Beer, and Barbecue with Todd and Lee. This is the Nikki X edition. Saturday, there actually will be a live Baseball, Beer, and Barbecue. It's going to be a barbershop sports edition. So we've broken it up. We've schismed with Baseball, Beer, and Barbecue just temporarily. So like us on Facebook and follow us on the Twitter at Baseball, Beer, and BBQ. Actually, I shouldn't say that. That's the name of the show. It's Baseball, Beer, BBQ. I think I always put the and in there. And read us on our blog site. For some reason. So we are going to have a website, and we're trying to work with a web designer, get a web designer. So if anybody out there knows of a good web designer, we're open to getting feedback from that. Of course, Todd and I restarted Nikki X several thousand years ago. So this is the Nikki X edition. This is why it's going to be a fairly short one. Basically, we're just going to catch you up on the baseball picture. Obviously, Todd is on the line, but it seems like I am monopolizing the conversation, so I'm going to say Todd's on the call. It's really just me, so sit back.
Hi. Hey, I have two comments.
Here goes the show.
Exactly. Two comments. Yay for the barbershop edition of Baseball, Beer, Barbecue this Saturday. And you did say schism, right? I just want to make that clear. Schism. Okay, just making sure.
You know, like when there were three popes.
And they were standing in a circle? Actually, it would be.
One was in France.
That would be a triangle. Anyway.
Spain. Anyway, so it's not really.
Oh my God! It just dawned on me. Three popes, triangle. It all comes together now. It all comes together. Phil Jackson. Yeah. Triangle.
Actually,
yeah.
Speaking of, since the show's already off the rails, I promise we're going to get to baseball in just 1 second. But did you see what Rush Limbaugh had to say about water on Mars?
Thankfully, no, I did not.
Well, now you will. I will read the quote.
Is it a Democratic plot? I'm sure it is.
Well, you already took the attention away from this. Yes, that's exactly what he said. He said, quote, don't know how long it's going to take, but this news that there is flowing water on Mars is somehow going to find its way into a technique to advance the leftist agenda. I would assume it would be something to do with global warming. Yeah, so that's it. Also, a happy thing to share. Cam Chancellor's back, in case you didn't watch the game on Monday.
Yeah, he's back, isn't he? Oh my God. Eventually we'll talk about baseball, but I was talking with a friend of mine about the Dolphins, and I thought their offensive line is so awful, and of course they're missing Albert, and how that can make a big difference. Not that big a difference, but it just shows how one guy can make such a difference because it's a domino effect. I mean, that's one thing, and now we'll get to baseball. Bill James was like the stat god of stat gods, and he would always say, you look at this guy's stats, and he really doesn't have that big an effect a game. You know, it's like he's worth 5 or 6 wins, and for whatever reason, and this is like a couple decades ago, and maybe now that he has actually been working in baseball, he realizes it. But you're not plugging in the numbers. You're plugging in the person, and that has a huge difference. Is Cam Chancellor statistically that much better than the guy who was playing in his place? If you just look at numbers, of course not. But look at the player. Look at the impact.
Right.
Oh, my God, that team is night and day with Cam Chancellor.
That's a good point, because you look at the player, and he didn't make a tackle. He caused a fumble on Megatron about to go into the end zone.
Right.
But how do you quantify that with statistics?
You don't.
It's like the guy made a crazy good play. I mean, he intentionally hit the ball exactly how he wanted to hit the ball, to knock it out of Charles Johnson's hands just before he was about to enter the end zone. So it was like, you can't. Stats have nothing to do with that. That is a human play.
Right.
It was crazy. Also, I don't know. Did you watch the game?
I only watched. I watched towards the end. I did not.
Did you see? Did you see his hit on Megatron coming across the middle?
No, I did not.
Where he just blew him up. It was classic Cam Chancellor, where
Wow.
Johnson catches the ball over the middle, and Chancellor is kind of in his zone. Johnson approaches him, and he hits him with his shoulder. Totally clean, legal hit. And Johnson, of course, has all the momentum of running, and Chancellor's just there. And Johnson, of course, immediately stops and goes backwards on his butt. But there's an angle, and you might need to catch this at field goals because they have the angle. But they have the angle of Chancellor, the opposite angle, what you can see on TV, of Chancellor hitting Johnson. Again, this is not a quantifiable play statistically,
Right.
but it sets a tone. It sets a physical tone that the rest of the defense picks up. But there's one angle, the opposite angle of the television that you can see it, and Golden Tate is about 8 to 10 yards behind Chancellor, and you can see him lean to the right because he's watching the play, and he almost winces like, oh, I know what's going to happen, and bam, literally bam, bam, it happens. So yeah, it was good. Anyway, we are going to talk baseball. Before we get into last night's game and the playoffs more in general, I want to point out a couple of things. Bryce Harper, a decent guy, decent guy, good. I'd say he's got a WAR of maybe 1. Anyway, so Harper, this is according to Sports Illustrated, Harper virtually has locked up the crowns for home runs, even though he hasn't actually ended up tied, and batting average, which he lost to D. Gordon.
Right.
A double honor, only 2 hitters as young, but he's still tied with the home runs and barely finished in second. But that was a double honor that he hasn't gotten now, but only 2 hitters as young as Harper have ever accomplished or been close to accomplishing. Ty Cobb in 1909 and Ted Williams in 1941. He also will win the / Triple Crown, which he missed out on batting average by just a few points, so he didn't get that. But that was only, even as late as he led into the season, that had only been accomplished by a hitter so young only 3 times, Cobb, Williams, and the other guy, a guy nobody had ever heard of, Stan Musial, in 1943.
And Harper is a great player and had a great season, but as you said, almost. There's a world of difference between doing it and almost doing it.
Yeah, but nobody had led that even that late in the season.
I know.
So that's still.
But
you just hate on because you're such a big fan of Jonathan Papelbon that you have to stand up for your guy, and I get that.
Unfortunately, it turns him into a footnote instead of historic. That's I'm not saying he won't be a historic player. I mean, he already is, and it would be awesome if he, pulls a Nikki and does it next year, actually gets the Triple Crown, and that would be fantastic. And Papelbon hopefully will become the footnote because what a moron.
Yeah, he's well loved by all the organizations he's ever played for.
Yeah, he is, isn't he? Good job.
So last night the Astros shut out the Yankees.
Yay.
Yeah, I think that one thing that really goes overlooked, Dallas Keuchel, of course, pitched 6 innings, shutout ball. The Astros won 3-0. The Yankees only had 3 hits. Of course, the Astros only had 5, but 2 of them were home runs. It was basically pure Astros baseball. Hit the long ball.
Exactly.
But, I think one thing that goes underrated for the Astros, and I'm jinxing them going forward, of course, but, it wasn't just Keuchel. He didn't pitch a shutout. They did shut out the Yankees, but their bullpen's really good.
Right. Exactly.
And it's kind of based on the same way that it's not as good as the Royals last year, although it may be better than the Royals this year because now the Royals have lost their closer.
Right.
But if you just look at the ERAs of the guys who pitched in last night's game for the season, 7th, 8th, and 9th inning, it's pretty impressive because you have a guy who came in the 7th, Tony Sipp, 54 innings, 3-4 record. I mean, if you blow a game as a reliever, you're going to have a losing record. That's not really indicative of how good of a reliever you are most of the time. 1.99 ERA, 62 strikeouts, 1.03 WHIP. The guy who came in the 8th, Will Harris, 5-5, but again, 1.9 ERA, 68 strikeouts in 71 innings, WHIP of 0.9. So nobody's getting on base. And then Luke Gregerson, of course, .95 WHIP. His ERA was a little higher, but his win-loss was 7-3, which is kind of weird for a closer to have that many decisions. But I mean, it just goes to show you that the team it's a good team, and it's going to be a good team for several years. Should be a good team for several years coming up. Did you watch the game? What'd you think?
I started watching from about the fifth inning. One thing we mentioned Sip, and obviously he had major control problems last night and was able to work through it. But I just had to laugh because I'm not sure who the female commentator was because I started watching late, and she was talking about how because now the count's 3-0. And talking about, well, obviously he's going to take a pitch, blah blah blah, and then it's 3-1. She said, well, he should swing at 3-1. Why? The guy's control is terrible, and of course the pitch was low, and he didn't swing, and he got the walk. It's like, why would you swing at 3-1? You need base runners. You need a guy in base. I mean, and the way he's been pitching, it's much more likely he's going to throw the ball, and you're on first base. Instead of, it's like, oh, yeah, single. It's like, are you kidding me? I thought Jack Buck was talking in a high voice or something all of a sudden. Thank God it wasn't on Fox. That made the game much more enjoyable for that because I didn't have to put up with Buck. But I did say Frank Buck, didn't I? That's great.
Frank Buck. No, you said Jack.
He was out hunting. But I was surprised that the Yankees didn't get to sit because, man, he was struggling. But he came through, and then that was over. Like you said, Harris and Greg Gregerson. Jeez, man, that's just nasty.
Did you say cheese?
Cheese.
Because that should be cheese, yeah.
Yeah. And he just has no
go ahead.
Cheese. He throws curvy cheese and sliding cheese and sinking cheese.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does. I mean, because you don't have to be a great closer who just throws a fastball. I mean, Mariano Rivera obviously had a fastball, but it was a cut fastball. He never threw anything straight.
Right.
Not that any good pitcher throws anything straight, but it wasn't just like I'm going to throw it 100 miles an hour, like Aroldis Chapman.
Right, it's not Chapman, right? But the results are the results. You don't have to be a flamethrower. If you can put the ball where you want it to be, and where the hitters don't want it to be, success. And the Astros are moving on.
Yep, and that's all that matters. I do wish that Major League Baseball would change I mean, if they're going to have a wild card, a one-game thing doesn't make any sense to me. It should be 2 or 3 because you got 3 of 5 in the division series. It should be 2 of 3 in the wild card. Right? Maybe it pushes it back a little bit, but they've got it so spread out at this point. I mean, the Astros don't play again. They play again Thursday, but I mean, it's not going to hurt to push it back a little bit. People are still going to care about it, I think.
And as you've talked about frequently, if they would shorten the season and to the point of even cut it down to 154 games, but play double headers, it doesn't push it back. Play the schedule the way the schedule needs to be. But I absolutely agree. The one game, I hate the one game wild card. It's just, I like the extra team in wild card, but I hate that it's just winner take all. 2 or 3, and like you said, the progression makes perfect sense. 2 of 3, 3 of 5, and then that would be wonderful.
Well, and you and I are we're old, but I mean, even when they started, expanding from just the World Series, originally it was 3 or 5, for the pennant.
Right.
Then they expanded that, and it was like, but I think 2 of 3 makes sense. Not saying the Astros would not win 2 straight against the Yankees. I just think it's 2 of 3. It's just it's baseball. Anybody can win one game.
Exactly. And
maybe
regardless if you're going with Keuchel, your absolutely best pitcher. I mean, that in a way that's unfair to the Yankees. It's like, wow, you got to beat this one guy. But that one guy can have a bad night, and before you know it, boom, he blew up. He gave up 6 runs, and that happens plenty of times. And it's unfair to both teams to just have the one game. Even if they're stupid and they don't fix the scheduling and put in more doubleheaders, and by the way, get rid of the stupid interdivisional games, interleague games at the end of the season. Like, let's go to Arizona and not be able to use our DH. That's really great. But there's a lot of things baseball could fix to make it even better than it is, although it's already by far the best game on the planet. Yeah,
it's the people meddling with it who try to overthink it, I think. are the issues. So tonight we actually have, and this is, I think the real reason I bring up 2 of 3 at least is because it's the Cubs and Pirates, the second and third best teams in Major League Baseball according to the record. There should not be a 1-game playoff for these teams. If anything, maybe reseed everything. I guess that's one thing they could do. I know that basketball is going to start doing that, which makes sense. But Cubs and Pirates, neither one of these teams deserve to have 1 game and done, because whoever loses is going to be done. But, Jake Arrieta versus Garrett Cole, that's great freaking pitching matchup, so that should be phenomenal. Yeah. So at least if you had 2 or 3, one, I mean, maybe that's the issue is, do you go from Pittsburgh to Chicago back to Pittsburgh? That's a lot of travel. But, I mean, I don't know. You got to make it fair. Maybe 1 and then 2, for the better team. Okay, the first game's here, and then the last 2 would be with. I don't know. I don't know how they do it, but there's got to be a better way of doing it because neither of those teams. It's funny. Let's pick a winner. It's like it's 1 game in baseball, like we just said. You have no idea. I mean, the Cubs would make a great story.
And plus for the team that advances, if you go to 2 or 3, now they're in much better shape for the second round because let's say the Cubs win because Arrieta just pitches lights out, like highly likely he will do that. And then what happens when they have to play the Cardinals?
Right.
Excellent point. Arrieta gets to pitch once, but they've got to pitch him tonight because who cares if he's available for the Cardinals if they don't win tonight? So, it's a no-brainer, but it's unfortunate. It really screws up your rotation after you get this 1 wild card game. So, well, just like the Astros, it's like, hey, Keuchel won, great. How often is he going to pitch against the Royals? It's
good point.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but yeah, tonight, man, what a pitching matchup, and what fun teams to watch. It's like, how do you root for one of those? Obviously, you're a Cubs fan or a Pirates fan, but I mean, other than that, the regular baseball fan, who do you root for in this?
Yeah. I mean, the Cubs would make a great story, but also the Pirates have their fans stuck by them when they were bad for 20 years.
Exactly.
So you almost like, it'd be cool if the Pirates won too. I mean, neither of these teams. Of course, the Pirates have won a World Series more recently than the Cubs, which haven't won one since I believe. What was it with the Sun King? Was it Louis the 14th?
It was
yes,
Louis the 14th. And I was just going to say,
which makes sense because his colors were blue and red.
I was just going to say you're correct about the Pirates, of course, and their fans sticking with them. But how long have the Cubs fans stuck with the Cubs? I mean, it's since Louis the 14th. They've been there. They've been packing really forever. So they don't deserve it more than the Pirates fans, but they sure as heck deserve it too. And that's why he's like, man, it's like what a tough. It'll just be fun and just you root for whoever wins, and then they get to run up against the 100-win Cardinals is like great, and they couldn't beat them all season long. I'm not talking head to head, but just they couldn't get past them all season long, and now they got to do it in the playoffs. It's like that just seems so screwed.
I gotta disagree with you on Cubs fans though, because when I was there in September one year, and they were about 20 games out of first, no chance of making the playoffs because there was no wild card at this point, and it was a rainy, cold day, and there were 2 empty seats. So, those people don't turn out.
A cold day in Chicago in September. It's like, yeah, that's pleasant weather.
They did not turn out for that game. I'll be honest.
Packers fans don't show up in weather like that.
So anyway, beyond that, Thursday's games, we have Texas and Toronto. That should be a good series. Houston and Kansas City. Again, that should be a good series. At this point, I guess if I'm going to pick anybody from the American League, it would be Toronto. Even though Kansas City has home field advantage, just Toronto hits the ball so well, and no matter which park, their away numbers aren't too far off their home numbers, really.
And too low back.
For exactly. And then in the National League, of course, you've got the Dodgers and the Mets, and the Dodgers have set up their rotation with Kershaw and Greinke 1 and 2. I think I would have gone Greinke and then Kershaw just because the history of Kershaw in the playoffs. But let me ask you this: we're going to end with this note because this is a shortened show, and then catch more up on Baseball, Beer, and Barbecue, the Barbershop Sports Edition on Saturday morning at 10 a.m. What do you think about the Matt Harvey thing? About him, he got stuck in traffic, didn't show up for his workout.
He apologized for it as he needed to. It's like, dude, You're Dominican. You don't get to show up late. You don't get to have excuses about you had to take a cab and you don't know how you got there. And you know who I'm referring to. It's just, moron. You can't do that. And he appeared to be very seriously contrite about it. But, man alive, what are you thinking, dude? That's not something you cut close. That's something you show up an hour early at the park. And by the way, this matchup, Mets-Dodgers, everybody knows this is the Baseball Beer Barbecue Invitational Series. So hopefully everyone appreciates what you gentlemen have wrought for their entertainment.
Well, and that's the true reason for the schism, is it not?
It is, isn't it? You just say schism, right?
I said schism, and I almost said the J word, but don't in the show with don't want to do that. So anyway, again, we'd like to thank you for listening. Tune in Saturday for the Baseball Beer and Barbecue Barbershop Sports Edition. Again, we want to end with Novak Djokovic is 25-0 at the China Open. Thanks for listening.
The fans hoping to catch a little bit of the old-time religion right here, baby. With Junior stepping up to the plate. Here comes the stretch. And the pitch to Junior on the way. Swing and a fly ball hit to deep right center field. That baby is going to be fly away. The old-time religion lives. Junior does it. A 2-run home run.